You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. Episode 9, Top 10 Tips for Getting Organised Fast. Welcome back, everyone. Today talking all things getting organised fast. So I know that getting organised is something that may be a challenge for some people, and I appreciate that also getting organised means different things to different people. And what I'm hoping to cover in today's podcast is not only a little bit of information around how to be organised, but actually giving you some really specific tips about what you can do in your work or your business or your personal life to become as efficient and as well organised as possible. Because when you're organised, amazing things happen. If you're organised, you stay on top of things and you're aware of what's coming up before they happen. So you minimize the chances of surprises. If you're organised, you will often be able to identify things that come your way, opportunities, for example, and make time for them. If you're organised, you will reduce the amount of stress and anxiety that is caused by not being organised. And if you're anything like me, you like to be organised on behalf of your entire family. And that's one of the things that I am really strong at, being organised. For those who don't know anything about my background, I've spent a really long time, about 15 years now, working in the corporate sector across different industries. And regardless of the roles and the industries that I've worked in, one of the key attributes to my personal success has been being organised. Being organised in a corporate environment when you are working on, multi-million-dollar programs of work is an essential skill. Because in those large programs, and especially in some environments where there are major risks that you need to be aware of, for example, I've worked in aviation, I've worked in mining and so forth, and not having surprises is really important. So to mitigate the chance of having surprises, we have to be, as a team and as an organization, really organized. So my role specifically in my career has been based around organizing other people. I have spent the last 15 years running project management offices, program management offices, also known as PMOs. It's a term that is used in the corporate space, and a lot of people will know it by that term. At the moment as well, in the most recent work that I'm doing with Agile Management Office, we are taking organization and being organized to another level by integrating that across an organization. But if I go back to what I was doing before I got into the corporate space, I was organizing events, I was organizing functions for families. I remember when I was younger, I organized an event for the family when I was about 12 years old. And I set up an event. I had organized raffle tickets. I'd organized catering through the mothers of the group, of course. I organized the fathers to cook the barbecue. I organized the other kids to perform inside the actual event. And doing that actually enabled me to continue to hone in on my organizational skills, because you need to know who is doing what so that you don't duplicate effort, you don't cause rework, and you are as organized as possible so you know what's going on at all times. In the corporate environment and in running a business every day, there are a lot of areas that require really strong organizational skills. When we're talking about corporate, I mentioned earlier that things can go wrong, and depending on the industry, regardless of the industry rather, that you are best able to mitigate surprises, stop them from happening or solve for them. You're able to put resources in the best place based on their availability. You're able to organize large teams of people that may be working on corporate events. You're able to organize what your schedule is going to be like for the next, week, month, year. And so in corporate, it's been really important for me to be organized. But then when we talk about business, on the business side, being organized in business, for those of you that have been involved in the business or are looking to be involved in a business at some point, you'll understand that being organized in business is a whole nother story. Because if you're anything like me, running a business day to day, not only do you have to organize the work that you're doing for clients, which in our business we call projects, but you also need to organize working on the business, not just in the business. You also need to organize your team, your team, your staff, your contractors, your employees. You need to organize payroll. You need to organize your social media and your marketing campaigns, advertising. You need to organize, office accessories and laptops. You need to organize teams of people and direct them to the best use of their skill sets so that they can all contribute to the organizational goals and objectives. And so being organized is imperative in my day-to-day. And being organized has made me a lot more useful for organizations and also better equipped in running a business day to day. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the top tips for getting organized. Now, one of the ones that I would like to start with is what I think is probably the most important one, and that is planning. So planning will mean different things to different people. But in essence, planning is going to help you be best organized because you're going to understand and know what it is that you should be working on and what you should be working on next. So doing the right things at the right time, as opposed to just being chaotic and sporadic and working on a bit of everything. You're not going to be focused. You're not going to have a clear vision or goal to reach for if you are not planning. In my world, both in the corporate roles that I do, in my personal life, but also in business, I look at planning as a regular activity. When looking at how we plan in our business, we have annual goals that we want to achieve. And we break down those goals into objectives. And then those objectives are further broken down and end up becoming initiatives and or projects in our business. Those annual goals that we want to achieve are broken down into quarterly goals. Those quarterly goals are broken down further into monthly. Monthly goals are broken down into weekly and then daily. Yes, it sounds like a lot of planning, but it doesn't take much time once you've set it up. You can use anything as basic as a simple Excel spreadsheet. If that's all you've got access to, you might use a handy notebook and write it all down. You might use a software product, a scheduling tool, for example, like Microsoft Project. Regardless of what it is that you're using, you need to think about your plan overall. Now, I know that there is a lot of differing opinions out there around whether it's worth planning 5 years in advance or 10-year plans. And look, things are changing so much in this agile world, in these agile environments, and this landscape that we're living in today, that being aware rather than detailed planning of what you want to achieve in the next 5 or 10 years is important. Being aware of where you want to go in business or in corporate life, your career or your personal life. But do you need to break down every single thing that you're going to do after, the next sort of 12 to 24 months? I don't think it's necessary. At very minimum, I try to list about 3 to 5 major goals that I'd like to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years, but that's it. I will revisit them on a regular basis. When thinking about 5 to 10 year goals, when I'm saying regular, I probably review them every 3 months. But breaking that any further down is not necessary, in my opinion, because it becomes something that you might actually end up changing with the activities and the work that you do within the next 12 months. So thinking about planning, having an annual view of what you want to achieve, and you can actually, record. I've got products that I use online, software products. I also use an Excel spreadsheet, and I also have notebooks. I have notebooks for different purposes. So I've got a notebook that is used for business purposes. I've got a notebook for the Beyond Blue volunteering that I do. I've got a notebook for my personal day-to-day. But in addition to that, I also use online software products, which I'll talk you through shortly. Using what works for you is important. Don't try to use something that you're not comfortable with. For example, I wouldn't see for example, my father, he's not very tech savvy. And so using a online spreadsheet or a software tool in the cloud is not going to work for him. So writing it down is fine. And that can work completely fine for you. The reason why I like to also update and use online products or products that are in the cloud is because I like to be able to download access them on my iPhone through the mobile phone app, the iOS apps that are available. And I'll give you a couple of examples of those shortly. So yeah, back to planning annually, break it down into quarterly, break it down into monthly, break it down into weekly, and then work out what you're going to work on for the day. And we'll talk a little bit more how to break down your weekly goals a little bit further in a moment. That's really, really, really simply put the most important thing that I think you need to do or be aware of in terms of being organized. If you are not aware of what your plan is for the next, at least next 6 months, how are you possibly going to know that you're organizing your resources, be it your time, your finances, your family or your colleagues or your workers, in working to achieve those specific goals and objectives if you don't know what they are? So planning is my number one. Number two, calendar and inbox management. Now, regardless of the program that you use, whether you use Microsoft Outlook products or Lotus Notes or Gmail, regardless of what it is, inbox and calendar management, I would say that most of you listening, if not all of you, are very likely to be using a particular product for calendar and inbox management. Now, that's not the tip. The tip is how you use your calendar and your inbox. Now, I use my calendar religiously. So anything that has a deadline in it, I put into my calendar. So for example, we have a white paper that the Agile Management Office is working on at the moment. And we are releasing that white paper rather later this month. So I've got deadlines in my calendar for the review period, which is happening right now, but also for the release date to make sure that the white paper is ready for distribution later this month. And so it's important for me to make sure that I don't put the due date of the item that I'm thinking needs to be done, because that doesn't allow me time to actually work on it. So I like to put a reminder as well, or put in a calendar entry and set up an alert that reminds you, a week or 2 weeks or a day, whatever it is. So calendar management is really important. If you can get into the habit of using your calendar for things you must do on any particular day, and use the calendar or check the calendar on a daily basis. I like to check it first thing in the morning, and I like to check it last thing at night. That helps drive me to understand where I need to focus. Now, my calendar changes sometimes hourly. I'm not saying that the calendar is stagnant and it doesn't change. It does change, and I adjust it accordingly based on what conversations I have throughout the week, what I've got planned, any cancellations or reschedules and whatnot. If you can plan your week ahead, at minimum week ahead, and stick with that, that will help you be organized, and you can plan for that week, and hopefully nothing changes in there, and therefore any new requests for meetings and things like that can be requested for future weeks rather. So for example, something I see a lot of executives do when I worked in corporate was the executive assistants would actually have like a folder of all of the information printouts, etc., for the CEO before their meetings for that whole week. And then I actually asked one of their assistants, but what if something changes? What if they decide that that meeting is not going to happen on that day, or there's a change and whatnot? And the response from the executive assistant was, well, we try to be as organized as possible by planning our week ahead so that the CEO has time to read up the information. The only reason why there would be a change is if something extremely urgent came up, or if there was, someone was unwell and they had to cancel, in which case they would reschedule. But other than that, they try to stick to the schedule as closely as possible so that there is minimal rework. And so it's very important to use your calendar and calendar religiously, because doing so can help you to stay on track with what you need to do. Inbox management, as part of this second point, inbox management is really, really important as well, because there is, depending on the type of software, mail server that you're using, be it Outlook, etc., there's a lot of different ways that you can utilize your inbox to the best of its ability. For example, in my inbox, I like to use categories for everything. So in Microsoft Outlook, it gives you an option to actually set color codes and name those color codes with a particular category. So for example, everything in my inbox that is highlighted with a green means it's related to my family, my personal day-to-day activities, not related to business, not related to the team, etc. Anything with a yellow marker or yellow category is labeled team. So that reminds me of everything that I need to do that is focused for team. So when I get into talking about theme days, which I'll talk about shortly, it enables me to quickly filter on all of the activities that I need to do that relate to what it is that I'm working on in that day. Everything that we do for clients is labeled clients and is red, because clients are at the core of everything that I do and everything our team does in our business. So using the categories function in your inbox is really, really helpful and really beneficial for your sanity, but also for you to be able to identify quickly what it is that email is about. Another thing for email as well is I like to mark my emails as unread if I feel that I need to action something in that email. If I need to respond to that email and I just don't have the time, or I've not been able to respond to the level of detail that I'd like to, I'll actually mark that as unread, and that indicates to me that I need to open that and respond. So that's another sort of inbox tip that I thought I would share. So when talking about planning, I mentioned earlier that there is some tools that you can use. So one of the tools that you can use, which I'll talk to you about in tip number 3, is, for example, Microsoft Planner or Microsoft To Do. Now, for anyone who is using Microsoft products such as SharePoint, Microsoft Planner, To Do, etc., they have some really, really good entry-level products. Now, we've been noticing that the products are going through testing, and so they are continuously improving, which is great. If you're using Google products, there's going to be something similar, no doubt. But for the purpose of tip number 3, I just wanted to share a little bit about Microsoft Planner and To Do, as well as giving you a little bit of information around them. So if you are a small business or you run projects, even small projects, having access and using product like SharePoint is absolutely brilliant for business. We use SharePoint quite heavily. We are a small business. We're a team of 8 at the moment, as of 2018. And so this particular tool, SharePoint, comes part of our Office 365 package, which is something that is available to any business anywhere. And I know that it's heavily utilized globally. So you're probably familiar with it. And if you don't have access to a product like that in your personal life, you probably have access to it in your corporate. Most of the companies I've worked at over the last 15 years have had some form of SharePoint. So SharePoint is one, Microsoft Planner and Microsoft To Do. So Planner and To Do are really, really interesting uses for them. To-do is literally what it sounds like, a to-do list. But you can create categories. So you can create personal categories, work categories. You can create categories to do with Christmas shopping. You can create categories to do with if you're running business, your departments or your functions. If you're working in corporate and you've got lots of projects, you could run what your tasks are by project. To-do is also available on a phone app. So you can actually download the app and use it on your phone, which is brilliant because you can update and check things on the go. And one of the features I like of To-do is the ability to actually go through and highlight in your To-do app what things you're going to focus on for the day. It's called My Day, and you can actually flag them and then shows you what to work on. Likewise, Microsoft Planner is like a planning tool for teams. We use it a lot for our project management in our business. It is used to help everyone in our team to know what they are assigned, and it also enables you to see by project the tasks complete, what's outstanding, what's overdue as a business owner or as a manager, and it also enables you to track notes and steps involved in a task. So if you've got multiple steps, you actually list that quite effectively in To-do. It's in Planner. In Planner, it also gives you a visual look for the planning task. So for example, To-do is very list based, so it's very generic and very simple, easy to use. Planner is a little bit more colorful. You can customize a little bit, and you can actually see your tasks, I guess, in a way that is similar to a Kanban wall. If you don't know what a Kanban wall is, have a look at it. It's very popular in the Agile world. So that is tip number 3. Tip number 4, list management. So I love to use lists. I have lists for everything. In order to manage my lists of information, for example, it's not every day that you go grocery shopping. Well, I don't. I like to batch up all my groceries that I need to buy and go once, maybe on the weekend. And sometimes it's really hard to remember everything that you need. So I'm not always, at home in front of the fridge where the shopping list is. So I would just put in my phone under the shopping list that I've created. Likewise, when I think of ideas to buy gifts for people, for example, Christmas is coming up, I use the gifts list that I've created, and I allocate the gifts that I plan to buy for people for Christmas. Other things I do in the list is, for example, I've got a holiday packing list, and that holiday packing list is everything that I need to do every time I go on a holiday. So I don't have to recreate or think about these things when things are stressful enough. So that's another way of using it, lists. Now, I like to use a product called Wunderlist. Wunderlist is spelled Wunderlist, because once again, it has an app that is quite handy, and you can actually set lists in any categories you want, as much lists as you want. I've got a cooking ideas list, just having a look at it now. My podcast ideas list, so when I'm thinking of new topics for you guys, and so forth. So Wunderlist is a great tool for that. It also can send you reminders like Microsoft Planner and To-do. So list management is really important, and using something electronically is fine. You can also have lists in your notebooks if that works better for you. Now, tip number 5. So when thinking about all of the information that you need to organize around ideas, or maybe events that you've got coming up, or a children's birthday party, or maybe your wedding, or other events of that sort. But also even if you're in business like myself, I often do a lot of recruitment for our teams, and I will often need somewhere to track my notes. And I like to have my notes in a central location so I can refer to them, but also so I can share those notes with other people. For example, when I take recruitment notes, I like to share that with our people and culture manager. And so having a place to put that information is really important. You can use anything that you find useful in how you like to track notes and ideas. But for me, I use Evernote. So that's Evernote. It's something I've been using now for about 5 or 6 years, and it's been really, really helpful because it is like a absolutely, endless, gigantic notebook, but it's in the cloud. And that means I can access it on my phone. I can download things from it. For example, I found a recipe on my phone the other day, and all I did was saved it directly on my phone into Evernote cloud. So I can access it at any time. It's got a really, really good search functionality. So it enables you to search, a particular recipe or a person you spoke to or a phone call you had. It's really, really handy. And so using Evernote is something that can help you in tracking your ideas, notes, meeting minutes, and whatnot. Tip number 6 is communications. So obviously calendar is a part of that, but in addition to that, something that has become a really big part of our day-to-day for us in business, but in my personal life as well, is the use of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a messaging software that is available on your phone, and it's actually available on the computer as well in the cloud through a desktop version that you can get access to. You can create different teams and different groups. So if you've got, a IT team, you can create an IT WhatsApp group. If you've got a specific event coming up, you can create a WhatsApp group for a product launch. You can create a WhatsApp group for a PENS party, any sorts of things whatsoever. So WhatsApp is something that a lot of people probably already know about, but it is something that has made communication in our team when we are working remotely a lot easier. And in fact, I use that quite a lot every single day. Tip number 7. Now, tip number 7 is not tool specific. Tip number 7 is about how you can get the most out of your day or out of your week to be as productive as you possibly can. I've done a lot of research over the years, read a lot of research rather, about all sorts of productivity hacks and all these sorts of information about how to be more organized. And one of the things that I heard at a recent event, and something I've been doing for a while, is called batching. So BATCHING, batching tasks. So if you put the tasks that are similar to one another into a time slot or a day of the week, for example, you're going to be more productive because you're focusing all your attention on a particular area of your business or your personal life or your corporate life. I mentioned to you earlier that when I use my inbox, I use categories. This is where batching comes into it. So for example, today being Tuesday, I spend a lot of time on Tuesdays doing things that relate to our employees, our team. So not only existing team members and doing things that relate to them in our people and culture function, but also recruitment. So I do a lot of recruitment. Everything that relates to those particular categories are the things that I like to batch together. They're people related. So anything people related comes together. Whereas say, for example, on Mondays, there's a lot of administrative, of financial management, month-end client reporting. They're all the things that I like to do on Monday. Whereas batching tasks later in the week, for example, there's a lot of work that relates to social media, advertising, marketing. It's done on Wednesdays. And I like to put blocks of time in the diary to do a complete focus on those types of activities. Batching tasks is a lot more productive than jumping from one task to the other. Now, you've probably heard this before, but they say multitasking is a myth. I'm sure many of us don't agree with that, but there's studies proving that it's a myth and it's not actually something that really does happen. I found personally that through doing batching of tasks, I became a lot more efficient and more productive in my week. So batching tasks is another tip for you to take on board, and you can start doing that as quickly as now. Number 7. Now, you may or may not have heard the phrase, eat the frog. Now, I didn't know what that was until I heard it in one of the roles that I was doing in my early career. Now, breaking that down, eat the frog basically means do the hardest task you've got to do for the day first. So if you've got, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the list of things that you've put in your diary and you've got from your list and you know that you've got to do tomorrow or today, pick the thing that is the hardest. This applies to your day-to-day life outside of work, even things at home. For example, when I'm doing housework, I dislike to do certain parts of the housework, but I know that I need to, and I will focus my attention on the thing that is going to be the most challenging, the most difficult, the thing that you really don't like to do. And that's what it's referring to when they say eat the frog. Eating a frog clearly is hard. So do the thing that you feel or believe is the hardest, the thing you least want to do. Get it out of the way. Doing that is going to make you start your day off much better. Continuing from that, I'd also recommend that you pick no more than 2 to 3 deliverables or activities or tasks that you're going to do for the day. In business, that might be, a proposal for a client. Maybe it's a update to a newsletter or writing a case study. In your personal life, it might be applying for, 5 jobs. If you're looking for work, it might be reading a chapter in a book, whatever it is. Pick 3 things and no more than that, because you'll find that you will put yourself under too much pressure to actually deliver more things that maybe are with less effort because you're trying to do more. So if you pick 2 or 3 things for the day and focus on them, eating the frog first by doing the most hardest or most difficult first, that'll probably help you get on your way for the day. Number 9. So I talked about batching tasks, also categorizing your days. Now, I know there's only 7 days in a week, but even the most successful people and even the most busy, even the people that are the most, the busiest people in the world only have 7 days a week, right? So if they can work out what they need to do in a week and get it done, then we all can too. So when we think about categorizing our days, think about your day, your week, and what it is that you do in your career or in your job, in your work life, in your personal life, in your business, whether you have a business, regardless, whatever it is that you do in your day-to-day, have a think about how you can categorize what you do. For example, from a personal example, I like to utilize a lot of Saturday for health and fitness activities. I mean, I do workouts during the week, but the one that is, excessive amounts of time that I like to spend on it, or doing something really, really adventurous, going to a new walking location, etc., picking Saturday for that. Vice versa. On the other side of that, there's also thinking about, what's the best day to do all the things that relate to projects that you might be working on, whether it's personal projects, business projects. Maybe Thursday's the best day for that because you have extra hours in the evening where maybe the kids are sleeping, or maybe you don't have kids and you have time in the evenings because your partner's away, or works late, whatever it is. Think about how you can categorize your days. Now, this doesn't mean that your days absolutely 100% have to be rigid and you must do the things that are based on that category for that day. No, it's not like that. But at least if you do try to stick within the realms of the activities that are within that category for those days, trial it out, see if it works for you, and then see whether or not there's any changes you need to make for the following weeks. I've been doing that now more recently this year to trial out and see, and that helps me to focus on and give 100% dedication to specific activities, rather than trying to do a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, a little bit of prospecting, a little bit of writing, a little bit of reading, a little bit of everything, and a lot of nothing. So categorize your days would be my tip number 9. And then my final tip for being organized is, sometimes as organized as you are, you don't necessarily have the time, the skill, or the bandwidth to actually get something done. And so sometimes when you are not equipped either in time or knowledge to do a particular task, it's so much better to just go out and get someone else to help you. And there are a lot of different platforms out there that are, based on people supporting freelancers that are available to can help you with a task that could be as simple as, modify the size of my logo, for example, on a website, to someone who can completely transcribe your blogs, to someone who can give you some expertise in sales that maybe you don't have, or maybe help you out with a homework assignment. There's a lot of different companies out there, but the ones that I've used and I've had some success with includes Airtasker. So Airtasker I've used for resizing logos, helping me with my header profiles for the Agile Ideas podcast, and just similar tasks, typing up business card information into our CRM system, for example, to name a few. So Airtasker is one of the ones that I've used to do that. Another one that I've used is also Upwork being UPWORK. And I've used that for, just tasks that I don't have the immediate team available for. For example, I don't have someone in our team that can transcribe our podcast, so I use that for actually someone who can help us do that. There are other platforms out there that are for more advanced type of work, but there are a couple of the ones to start with that I thought I would share with you today. So that is pretty much my top 10 tips for getting organized fast. By no means a complete list. There is definitely a lot of things that you can do outside this list. There are a lot of other tips I could add. I could probably talk about this for a really long time, but as a sort of test podcast today, this one's almost double the length of a regular one. So please let me know your feedback. If there is a particular aspect of today's podcast that you would like me to share more information on, or you would like me to provide information for, please let me know. Get in touch. If there's also a topic that you would like me to discuss in future podcasts, I'm also very happy to do that. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening to this podcast today. As usual, welcome any feedback, and if you enjoyed today's podcast, please let us know. You can also visit us at www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope today that you've been able to learn, feel, think, or be inspired. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?